Hey there, everyone. This is Chris McDonald, Matt Avery. We're going to be doing the race day certification for MYLAPS timers. And we still have a couple people joining. So before we get going, I know many of you have used GoToWebinar before. There will be, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the toolbar that you have, I believe on the right-hand side of your screen. And then we will go through, I think we have about, I don't know, 60 slides or so. And then from there, we will have a quiz at the end. Some of you guys could probably pass this quiz right now. Others might need a little bit more training. So for those of you that have been utilizing race day scoring and MYLAPS for a while, this will just be a review. You might learn a little bit here and there. For those of you that are new timers, give you a little bit deeper dive into both, or a deeper dive into the integration with MYLAPS, but a cursory overview of race day scoring. So if you're not yet race day scoring certified, shoot either me or Matt an email, and we can make sure that happens. But this is specifically for MYLAPS timers for that integration. So with that being said, we'll get going.
Hey,
so,
Chris, before we move on, one more thing. On GoToWebinar, we have added a handout, and there's like on the panel, there's a section for handouts. In there are links to view the presentation that we're going through now. You can also download that if you wanted to. And there's a link to take the quiz right in that handout as well. So the documents that you need are found in that handout.
Perfect. So who is this intended for? It is intended for novice and experienced timers who utilize MYLAPS for timing. We'll be providing a basic intro to race day scoring, and then a little bit deeper dive into how to pair timing and scoring as an exporter with race day scoring as your scoring platform. And this will be like the first step in onboarding for those of you that are looking to get more involved with race day scoring. So we've talked about this previously. We put this in here specifically for MYLAPS, and that is because Matt and I speak with a lot of timers regularly. And one thing that we find is we get a lot of questions about like, oh, well, my decoder is doing this, or how do I do that with ProChip? And the reality is Matt and I might know the answer to it. However, you really need to know who your MYLAPS contact is. And so many of you know David, but if not, I've added in his, and I did ask him if he cared if I did this, but I did add his email address and his extension in the office. He's based out of Atlanta, and he's a great resource. So if you do, need anything from MYLAPS, or if you have questions about how something's working specifically with your hardware or timing and scoring, he's someone to ask, and he can point you in the direction of, if he happens not to know the answer, if it's a bit more technical, he can point you in the direction of who can answer that. But on top of that, you also need to, build out your computer support network, a network of timing friends, and then on our end for RunSignup and Race Day, you have a number of people that you can contact for different questions. So if you have questions about the Race Day products, results, the check-in app, registration, you're probably going to be emailing info@RunSignup. And then if you have specific questions about Race Day scoring, there's Race Day at RunSignup. Race Director, you have support at racedirector.com. And for RaceJoy, if you're using RaceJoy on our platform, that's info@racedjoy.com. And with Race Day scoring, there's also that help button in the top right when you're in an event. It does zip up a complete backup of your event that you're working on. And that's sent to our support team, which is in office 7 days a week. So we get a lot of people shooting random emails, or I'll get Facebook messages or text messages the best way of getting in touch with our support team, if you're at a race on Saturday or Sunday, or I guess a number of us do time Monday through Friday, but mainly on the weekend, if you do need help, click that help button. So we're going to be covering a number of things. Again, for some of you, this is going to be review, so I'm not going to read through all of this. But if you want to circle back to what is where, all of these are hyperlinked in that PDF. So it should help you take you to the right location. And there's hyperlinks throughout to support documents that are on the back end of RunSignup. So managing races with race day scoring. Again, this is not so much what is a race, philosophically. It's in terms of when we talk about races and when we talk about events, it's so we're using the same nomenclature. And so a race and race day scoring is a collection of related competitions in the same year. And those competitions are called events. They may or may not take place on the same day, but they're usually on the same day or weekend. The races and race day scoring are exactly the same as RunSignup races. So if you are familiar with how RunSignup is structured, it's the exact same in race day scoring. And races can have one or multiple events. A lot of times they're different distances, but they don't have to be. So here's an example. Run for Hope is the race, and they have a 10K event and a 5K event. So once you get into race day scoring, you have two different options for creating a race. One is import from RunSignup, and the import from RunSignup is about as easy as it gets in terms of build out. So now if your race is on RunSignup, this is what you should do. And there's no need to download participant lists. There's no need to import that into race day scoring. All of the participant data will sync bidirectionally from race day scoring to RunSignup, and vice versa. So and this participant data will magically appear once you sync it. We say magically because there's an API built into the backend. For some, it's computer science. For some, it's magic. And any future changes made on RunSignup will show in race day scoring. So, if you have people continuously registering, those people, if you are online on your timing computer and have race day scoring open with the participant sync turned on, those people will sync down. It might take 20 or 30 seconds, but they will sync down, and that way you don't have to have like say a runner jogging paper registrations back and forth, so that you're frantically typing things in at the finish line. And you can also create events manually, and it's very useful for scoring races that are not using RunSignup. You have the option to create a race at RunSignup when setting it up. The real benefit there is it gives you a landing pad for results. So if you're wanting to push results live up to the web as that data is coming in, that race that you set up, it's quite literally a radio button that you click, and it generates like a skeleton event at RunSignup. Now, if the race already exists on RunSignup, you don't want to create one manually. If you can tell it's on RunSignup and you don't have access to it as the timer, then you need to speak to your event about being added as the timer for that event, and that will get you secondary access. You won't see financials, you won't see like some of the promotional things, but you will be able to see the participant data. You will be able to see the events, the corrals, the bib assignments, things like that. So and that allows you to sync everything back and forth with race day scoring. So here are your two options once you're in race day scoring. One is import a race already on RunSignup, and the other is create a new race. So those are at the very top once you get into manage races. So participants, how to import, add one by one, view, and manage them. So this is the sidebar of race day scoring. And the assumption here is that you have some knowledge of race day scoring. Again, if you don't, shoot me an email, chris@runsignup.com. I'll get you set up on some self-certification materials. You won't get too lost with any of this. And there's a secondary assumption, and that is that you're familiar with timing and scoring and have used it to time either within timing and scoring, within race day scoring, within some a race director or some other scoring platform, but you've used timing and scoring before. And so this is your dashboard. This is your participant sync. The third thing down is participants and teams. So how do you access participants and teams in race day scoring? You click this button and it brings everyone up. You have a couple of things. You have one, you're synced because you've got all the people that have registered at RunSignup. You can import additional people or you can import CSV files. You can manually add people within the system if you get handed a paper form. You can go into settings to limit the fields that are available when you add people. That way you don't have to tab through or click through all the different fields. And then data actions, and we'll go through the data actions here in a bit. And right now we're looking at all events. I know it just says 5K adult right here, but we're looking at all events, and that includes the 5K adult, youth, virtual, and youth. So this is where you're going to go to get to those participants. Importing participants, like we said, you can import right with this button right here. They can be imported manually through a CSV import or automatically through RunSignup through that sync. If you've imported the race from RunSignup or published your manually created race to RunSignup, any ads or updates made to the participants will be showing in race day scoring and the RunSignup level. If you've connected your race to RunSignup, you can still import a CSV into race day scoring, and those folks will show up at the RunSignup level in that skeleton of the event, that framework of the event. So if you click the add a participant, so if you click this button right here for add a participant, you have the ability to go in and manually type in first, last, date of birth, age, street address, city, state, zip. You also have the ability to enable quick mode, and the settings here dictate what is in quick mode. This is where you can remove things like city or you can default the city, default event. If you're not manually typing in people that are in the fun run, you're only typing in people that are in the 5K, you can, in the quick mode, default everybody into the 5K. And then you can also use keyboard shortcuts to make typing the entries in faster. So BibChip file, we're gonna briefly go over this just so we can show you where to add it. A number of you use BibChip files all the time, but BibChip files are the Rosetta Stone for timing, linking a timestamp raw read from a decoder to a database of athletes who have bib numbers assigned. The reason why we bring this up is because if you're utilizing ProChip or you're new to ProChip, you will need a BibChip file. And if you're timing bib tag events where the bib number doesn't match the chip number, again, you will likely need a BibChip file. So, and this is just an example of how it works. Again, this is for the people just getting into timing. That raw read on your decoder is going to timestamp 11:23:45.22, and it's going to comma ADS, or if you're on ProChip, it might be AD 13241 or something like that. The BibChip file is just going to be a file that says this chip code is equivalent to this bib number. And then in your athlete database, that's either pulled in from CSV or pulled in from RunSignup, it says that John Smith has bib 123. So it takes this database of athlete database and this database of raw reads, and it connects the two through the chip number, the chip equals bib. So bib chip file. So the resulting data point here is John Smith has a time of 11:23:45:22. So how do you take care of this? So the chip auto assignment feature is used to apply the bib chip file and potentially existing athletes in the future as well when you're working on a race. So setting up the chip auto assignments are what you're going to do if you have, most of you guys are going to be using the bib chip or bib tag system, and you do not have to set it up. If it's a one-to-one scenario here, like so bib 1 equals chip 1, or bib 1 has chip 1, bib 1001 has chip 1001, it doesn't matter where you start. If they're both the same, you do not have to set up a chip auto assignment. And so if you're not, you do need to load in your bib chip file. And so you're going to do that under actions and set up chip auto assignment. You're going to load that file in, and when a registration comes in and you have that bib assigned, it's going to automatically take that listing from the bib chip file and assign the chip code. So when you go into that participant record within race day scoring, you will see the chip code for whoever just registered. One thing to think about here, because this happens a number of times, I just want to make this a quick note about this, and that is if everybody's one-to-one, but then you have one person who is, you accidentally tag bib 100 with chip 101 and bib 101 with chip 100. You're going to go into setup chip auto assignment. You're going to do a single chip assignment, and then you're going to have to do one-to-one assignments within here. So again, we have some additional literature on that, but just keep that in mind. If you do have a singular bib assignment that is not one-to-one, you do have to make sure you have a bib chip file for everything. So streams and timing locations, making sure that the right read is selected for each participant. So this is where most people get, or if someone's to get confused, it is about streams and timing locations. The beauty of it is, for MYLAPS timers, is it is a very, very streamlined. For instance, if you've been through the timing certification process with race day scoring, it's actually a MYLAPS certification. We use bib tag files, and when you're setting up the streams within race day scoring for that certification course, you're setting it to bib tag. So streams are connected to timing scoring or a collection of files in folders. So the stream is going to be coming out of timing and scoring, and it's either going to be a TCP/IP connection, which is direct, or you're going to be saving export as a file and then pulling the file into race day scoring. So streams gather all the chip read data from the sources, send it to race day scoring, process them into scored reads, and again, when you get this, you can see this is hyperlinked. You can get a little bit more information on getting reads and race day scoring. But because we're focused on MYLAPS, we're actually going to go through very specifically how to set up TCP/IP and file connections. So streams and race day scoring are the next thing down. So you can see we have an assigned stream here, and this one is a MYLAPS readLite file. So this is a file stream for a MYLAPS system. So when you click on streams, you have the ability to find streams you already have. You can go into settings and set a default decoder or default hardware type, and then you can also add new streams. So if you go into add new streams and you don't have it set up, you're going to see all the different types here. If you set it to MYLAPS specifically, you're only going to see two. You're going to see MYLAPS Direct, and you're going to see File. So we have two different types here, TCP/IP and File. For TCP/IP, we're going to select MYLAPS Direct. For File, we're going to select MYLAPS readLite File. And we're going to go through the TCP/IP process first. So for creating the TCP/IP stream, the stream type we selected is MYLAPS Direct, and we would call our stream name like whatever, start or something like that. The stream name itself doesn't actually matter. However, the timing and scoring location name right here does matter. This right here must equal the location that is coming from out of timing and scoring. So otherwise, it will not pull, they will not connect. So it doesn't matter what your decoder names are. It only matters what your location names are. So that's what we're looking for here. And so we're going to name this the exact same thing that's in there. And the system type, we're going to put bib tag because this is a bib tag event. And then you can assign the main stream or backup stream at that point. So a little bit further down, you can change all read dates if you want to. Let's say your decoder is going haywire and it says it's like January 1st, 2019. You can change all read dates to, I don't know what today's date is, 6/28/2022. And so at that point, any read processed by this stream is going to automatically be assigned to today's date. Or you can set it to the race date. So something else that under the advanced settings are your listen address, which is normally, these are default settings. Localhost, your listen port is 3097. And in some cases, for some of you that are utilizing, maybe you have a multiple event weekend or something like that, you might have group IDs or batch IDs, you know, that leading 01. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. If you are ordering tags with group IDs, then you do need to be wary that this function is here, and you will need to make sure that your bibchip file corresponds with that. So if we look at our TCP/IP settings within timing and scoring, this is just a snapshot. We're going to see our host settings here of localhost, port 3097, listen port 3097. Now, there are scenarios where this is changed. I don't know if it's still the same, but if you are using the MYLAPS event app, I do believe that event app utilizes port 3097. So they suggest in those scenarios that you change this to 3096. And then you would be changing this to 3096 as well. So again, if you don't know what I'm talking about in terms of the event app, don't worry about it. This is the default setting. And we get to this screen right here by adding an exporter, a TCP/IP exporter in timing and scoring, and then clicking the little gear button, the little gear icon. Oh, right here. Yeah, we connect that, hit that gear icon right there to bring this up. So creating a file stream, just going back, we've already selected the MYLAPS readlight file. It brings up a file type. And so you're gonna select MYLAPS readlight file. And once you do that, it's going to say MYLAPS readlight file for both. At this point, what you're gonna do is you're gonna need to browse and find the path that that file is gonna land in, right? Our extension for that is gonna be a text file. And again, this event is still a bibtag event. So here's a user-defined file, exporter, out of timing and scoring. So we're hitting our settings button here. And we do need to make sure that the format is readlight, predefined, because that's what it's looking for. File type, readlight file, format, readlight, right here. These are your default settings, so you do not need to change this. So for output, you're going to put that same output folder that you put here. Autosave, you're going to select autosave is on. I usually just leave this, I think it defaults to 60 seconds. I just leave that at 60. It's not really parsing much faster than that if you really want to. I mean, if you're trying to get a faster connection, you probably want to use a TCP/IP connection. If you're using file as your primary point of data entry into race day scoring. You could increase this, but most people leave it at 60. And then how do you want the file to save? You can create a new file in the save, or you can append. Both will work. I personally like the append. Append means it's going to keep adding the information at the bottom of the same file. And what that means is if you hit create a new file on save, every minute a new file is going to be created in that folder. And so the reason why I like append is because if I ever have to pull that data for some reason and drop it into a CSV file or something like that, so I need to look at raw data, it's much easier to pull that data in than having to sort through, if it's a 90-minute race, you might have 120 files in that folder. So again, personally, I like the append to existing file on save. So again, we've set up all that. You have the ability again to change the read the read date, and then you also have a couple other functions here. One, group ID exists, so that's the same thing as that batch ID we talked about. Retain chip code 0 padding. So those are the deleting zeros before. You can keep them, you can remove them. You just need to make sure that your bib chip file matches what you're telling us. And then retain duplicate reads, you can do that for both. But normally you're getting those because you hit rewind a second time or a third time or a fourth time in timing and scoring. Usually you don't want all those duplicate reads to be present. And then you're going to hit save on that file stream. So what are timing locations? Timing locations are a collection of one or many streams of read data. Now, for everybody else, or for all other hardware types, basically you're looking at a stream per decoder. MYLAPS is awesome because it's set up the way the data exports is a stream per location. So it's realistically, it's a one-to-one-to-one relationship in between streams in timing and score, a location in timing and scoring to a stream in race day scoring to a timing location in race day scoring. So it makes things much, much easier for those of you that are using MYLAPS. So again, you just need a single stream for each timing scoring location you have, and that stream will more than likely be assigned to a single timing location in race day scoring. So
hey, Chris,
the read data from the, oh yeah, go ahead.
One thing want to mention before we move off of the timing and scoring locations, specifically for the file type, one thing to keep in mind is that when you create the single exporter from timing and scoring, if it's hooked up to multiple locations in timing and scoring, like you've got your start decoders, your 2 start decoders connected to your 1 start location, and 2 finish decoders connected to your finish location, and you have both of those locations hooked up to your 1 file exporter, and you have that folder that you're dropping the files into, what timing and scoring does is it will create a folder named the same thing as each of your timing and scoring locations. So it'll create a folder within that folder called start and another one called finish, and then it puts the files into those respective folders. So when you end up creating the file streams in race day scoring, you have to keep in mind that it's not the same folder as the one that's in your timing and scoring exporter. It's actually going to be like the folder that you put into timing and scoring exporter and then start and then finish or whatever it is. So you'll notice that when you actually play the reads through in timing and scoring, it automatically creates a couple of subfolders within that directory. So just keep that in mind when you're building out your files, that you're going to be first having to create the exporter and make sure that the folders are there for each of your locations, and then create the file streams in race day scoring so that they're pointed to the right spot.
And if you're using the TCP/IP direct streaming, then you'll just have one connection, one stream for all the locations, and it'll all come through the one pipe. So just the difference between direct connect and file. If you do direct connect, you just have one pipe from timing and scoring, and everything comes through the one pipe.
Yep. And so when you're setting up these timing locations in race day scoring, you just want to make sure that you are selecting the location type. It does determine how the reads are handled. So for instance, a read at a start location they're taken as the last time seen for each bib, because if somebody's still milling around, then they haven't started yet. And any finish or split locations are taken as a first time seen, because in theory, the first time you get to that finish location is when you're finishing. They do have a lot more options in terms of laps and splits and things like that. But just for a general overview, the start and finish or start finish split locations, you do want to make sure you select the right type of location when you're building out your timing locations. And then you can also set up time filters for those, and those can help, those time filters can help control time ranges for allowing valid bib reads through to be considered as scored reads. And again, there's an additional hyperlink here to adding timing locations. So timing location time filters, this allows you to filter out unknown or unwanted raw reads. And each timing location gives you the ability to filter out the reads coming in from the streams by time of day. So start reads can be filtered out until a set time, and usually a couple minutes after the gunshot. And then finish and split reads can be considered starting at a set time. So it'll say, don't consider a finish time until 8:14 or something like that for a race that started at 8 o'clock. So that means that if people at 7:45 walk across the finish line as they're going to the start location, it might bring in that raw read, but it's going to filter it out because it doesn't meet that time filter criteria. It is possible to connect a single stream to multiple locations, and this is useful for situations where there's a single finish area, more than one scored event. So scenarios where this happens is, let's say you have a 5K and a 10K, and maybe you don't have a start mat, but you don't want to, you could use the same stream pointed at timing locations called 5K finish, 10K finish, with the stream coming in pointing at both of those, and then use time filters to parse out a different time subset. So like maybe you don't want to allow any 5K finishers before 14 minutes, but you don't want to allow any 10K finishers before 32 minutes or something like that. So it's very helpful. And again, we have additional documentation on how to set that up that can really help you. It's more kind of an advanced topic. So filtering out unneeded raw reads, these rules combined with how timing locations select reads make it easy to ensure you get the best read selected without having to worry about, like we just talked about, people walking around the finish mat or transition area mats with their chips on before or after they finished, or before they started or after they finished. And so it just really helps you with those, with filtering that data out as needed. And so where is that? Where is this? So when you're in those timing locations, you can see this is a start read setting and this is a finish read setting. So it says consider start reads or consider start times until. And so if the race started at, let's say it started at 8 o'clock, you might put, we're going to consider start times until 8:13:00 a.m. So that means anybody that reads before 8:13 is going to be considered a start read. And then finish or split, anybody that reads, well, there were already some data in there. So maybe it started at, maybe it's a 10K and it started at 10 o'clock, sorry. And so we would put 10:29:99 or something like that, or 10:29:59:99. So there's nobody that's going to break that 30-minute mark. And so then we can put in 10:30. So anytime after 10:30 is going to be considered a finish time. In this specific example, this is a shared start finish. And so we have two occurrences here. So we can also use a gap factor and say, don't allow any two reads if they don't meet this gap factor. For those of you that have been staring at Relight and and timing and scoring for years and years. This is a very similar concept to TBSC, or time between same chip. So it basically says that this is not a valid, doesn't meet a valid scored read criteria if not enough time, if this gap factor of time has not passed since the last time. So let's say the gap factor is 30 minutes, right? And they read, and then 20 minutes later they read. It's going to still think that second read is a start read because it hasn't met the gap factor. It's going to continuously think that they've not actually started because they haven't met that gap factor. So where can you find timing locations? We've kind of, if you can't tell, we've been moving down this this left-hand side. So the timing locations here are the next thing down underneath streams, and you can add locations as needed. You can see in this example, you have start and finish locations. You can go in and change the settings here. You also get a very quick and dirty how many scored reads there are presently. Now this is not raw reads, so this start might have had, you know, like 1,500 reads because people are sitting there listening to the national anthem and the pre-race announcements and all that, and they're reading over and over and over again. This number right here is just the scored reads, so please keep that in mind. So in theory, if we're looking at this, we either had 4 people at this point drop or 4 people that haven't finished yet. So what is the difference between raw and score read? Raw is completely unfiltered from timing and scoring or your files within folders that the streams are connected to. They can be selected to be used as scored reads depending on a lot of factors. There's a number of reasons why they're ignored and aren't considered scored reads. Filter by time, we've already talked about because we put those time filters in. Better read selected, that is when they finish the race and then they walk back over to the finish. Well, it filters out the second read. Why? Because there's a better read selected. Unknown bib or chip. You forgot to assign bib number 111 to someone because a volunteer just threw the bib to them and said, just go run, we'll sort you out later. That's where you're going to see unknown bib or chip. Occurrence not defined. That means that they're hitting a place that they're not supposed to be hitting. A later segment already completed means they're hitting. You've got a setting put in there that like they're hitting the end of T2 and they don't have a swim finish read. The no event for bib. That bib is not assigned to the right event. Extra finish occurrence. That is exactly what it sounds. Use selected read. That means this one actually. Oh goodness, I can't remember the reason for this one, but occurrence not used in segments, and maybe you have a certain number of occurrences and they've hit it multiple times more than you would have expected. So you can dig into these as they occur. You can click into each one. It'll break out specific reasons as to why they were filtered out and not scored. So scored reads are created from raw reads. This is the best read for the parameters that you have set. And if the timing location is a start type, like we talked about, it'll be the last scene. Up until the time filter, it's a finish or split. We'll consider it as the first read or the first time we've seen it after the starting point in the time filter. And these scored reads are what's used to calculate your segment times and your overall finish times. So where do you see these? So we're back onto the dashboard right here. So if you're in your main dashboard or you're somewhere else within race day scoring, you can always click the house, brings you back to your dashboard, and you can see all the raw reads here. And you have 49 scored reads. Now, this actually is not a great example because it says 4,008 raw reads and 4,008 of them are ignored. So there should be 4,008 plus 49. So I'm sure we were doing like some rewind or something like that, causing that. But this is where you're going to see these. A lot of times I'll tell timers that the place you want to kind of live is double checking these ignored reads to make sure you don't have like unknown bibs or chips, things like that. So when you click into it, when you click into this 4,008, it is a hyperlink. So when you click into it, it takes you into all of the reads, gives you your device, 24-hour time, the date, whether or not it was used, the bib, chip, and then their name. And all of these are clickable, and it'll take you into the participant record. You can also use these filters up top. If you want to just check for bib number like 611, you can type in 611. It'll filter out everything except for bib 611. Or you can use, ignored reads or ignored reason, or you can select a specific stream. So viewing scored reads is clicking on that 49 that we saw. This is a different event, obviously, with 492 reads at the finish, but this gives you who the scoring entity was, like the person itself, the bib, the chip, what occurrence it was, and the timestamp. You can also add times here. You can add raw reads in here. So you can, if you add times here, it's going to mandate that it's used because it's assuming that you want to add that read in as a scored read. If you add a raw read in, that raw read is going to be filtered by all your filters that you have set everywhere else. So just keep that in mind that these raw reads, if you're adding raw reads, if you have time filters or bib filters or event filters or whatever, it is going to follow those rules that you have set up. Whereas scoring reads, it's going to kind of force that. If you add a time in here, it's going to force it to be used as a scored read. And then finally, for those of you that aren't as familiar with timing and scoring or exporting data out of timing and scoring, how do you export reads out of timing and scoring? Since we've been talking about getting all this data into race day scoring. So first thing you're going to do, obviously, you're going to have your timing location. You're going to have your decoder assigned to that timing location. You're going to have your files in here. Hopefully, you've got your mats hooked up and you're getting reads in. You're going to select your exporter at the top, and this in this case is a user-defined file. In other cases, it might be TCP/IP. You're going to make sure this link is enabled so that you're sending this exported to the user-defined file. You can have TCP/IP and select both of them. So this import device is going to both exporters, and then you're going to press play here. Honestly, I usually turn my I usually press play on my exporters first, but not before I click the settings and make sure that my exporters have the correct settings for my TCP/IP or user-defined files. And this means that I know it's going to the right folder if it's a file, and I make sure that my COM port is right and my listen address and all that is correct for TCP/IP. So once I have this playing, then I press play on this. If I need to, I can also hit the rewind button and make sure all that goes over. It will, for TCP/IP, it will have a number here until it pushes over, and then that number will go to blank. So that gets through. We're kind of at the halfway point right now. So I believe we're going to pause for 1 second and see if we have any questions that need to get floated out. We'll do questions for about 5 minutes. We're about 45 minutes in. I think we have about, I think we're right at halfway through the slides. So any questions that need to be addressed? Let's see. So we don't need to have no, you don't need to have a TCP/IP exporter for each location and timing and scoring. All of them can be pointed. So you only need one TCP/IP exporter. You can point all of them, all of your locations in timing and scoring to that exporter, and it will divvy them out in race day scoring. Let's see. One
just came in.
Okay.
The timing location name is case sensitive. It absolutely is, and it's typically one of the main points of confusion. If people are like, what the heck's going on? Why don't this work? It's because they named it START, all capitals, in timing and scoring, but lowercase in race day scoring. So you have to make sure it matches exactly.
So there's another question. What situation would you need to be in to manually type in raw reads? So if you missed a read at the finish line, and maybe it's not even you missed a read. Let's put ourselves at a triathlon, right? And there's body marking, and the guy runs by with 100 on his bicep, and you look down and he doesn't have a chip on his ankle because it, whatever. He never went to chip pickup because he's been running 5Ks his whole life. So you need to manually enter in athlete 100 at an approximate finish time, and you look up your backup video or your time machine or summit timer or whatever, and that's why you would need to add that raw read in. So that person that's either a missed read or somebody forgot to wear their chip, you could still enter that data in, and it would be treated just like a chipped read. So if you keep replaying a file, are the duplicate raw reads ignored? So that's back to yes, that is a setting that it's automatically ignored. You would have to go into your location and say you don't want it ignored. I can't think of any scenarios. I'm sure there are some. Matt might have run into some helping out with the support side, but I can't think of any reasons why you would want all those redundant reads kept, but you absolutely could keep them. And yes, if you kept hitting replay in timing and scoring, it would just make your number of raw reads go up. Yeah. All right, I think we got through most of the questions.
All right, so I'm going to pick it up from where Crisp left off, give his voice a rest, and go through the second half of this deck, which is more focused on the race day scoring side of things. We will again take some more time out once we've completed there in case any other questions come up. So I'm going to go ahead and take over the presenter. Maybe Crisp, you have to make me presenter. Do you know?
Yep, I'm switching over right now.
Oh, here we go. Perfect.
There you go.
All right, can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So moving on from the streams and locations, we now know how to get all of our reads into race day scoring. We know how to filter them so the right ones are selected, and so on. So the next part is scored events and segments. This is how we tell the system how to use those reads that have been selected to produce times. So these are our net times, like 15-minute 5K instead of just a time of day. All the reads and race day scoring at the raw read and the timing location scored read level, it's all time of day. So now at this point, we're going to start translating them into net times, essentially. So first off, what are scored events? It's this concept we made up basically that allows you to group together registration events. We work really well with RunSignup, and the integration is built out very nicely. One of the main problems that we have, one of the conflicts, is that registration coordinators like to set things up one way, timers like to set things up a different way. So we created this extra level called scored events so that you could easily group together all those various registration categories that those coordinators like to create, like the 5K run, the 5K walk, the 5K club pricing, the 5K 12 to 19 pricing. Like they just create all these different ones. You can really easily in race day scoring consider them all as one main scored event. Generally, what you'll do is set up a single scored event for each of the distances that you're reporting, or each main report that you have. Think of it that way. You'll have like, let's say a 5K report, a 10K report, and a 15K report. Now, you do have the ability to do all sorts of fun filtering way down the road. If you wanted to create a separate report for just the people who selected the 5K club pricing, you could do that, but they should still be included in your main 5K scored event, the 5K run here as shown on the right. So most of the time, if you are like building a race from the ground up, not using RunSignup for registration, this doesn't even apply to you. You're just going to create a registration event called 5K, and then you're going to create a scored event called 5K. So sometimes this applies that it's, you're mapping a bunch of different events into one scored event, and sometimes it doesn't, and it's just a single 5K run to 5K run relationship. So in race day scoring, you'll find scored events, the next menu item down. Hope you're starting to get the idea that you kind of walk down the menu in race day scoring when you set things up. So we're now in scored events, and you can see on the right here, all of the included registration events. So you'll notice that some of them are grayed out. It's because you can only select multiple registration events if their distances match. And you'll see it says right there, 3.1 miles. So this is for a RunSignup event. But if you were to create a race, offline, you would enter in the distances there, and you could only combine together those events that have the same distance. So keep that in mind when you're building things out. If you notice that you can't select like 5K and 5K walk, maybe the race set up the 5K walk as 3.124 miles and the 5K run as 5 kilometers. And we said those aren't exactly the same, so one is grayed out. In that case, you got to go change the distance so they match exactly. So this is just how you group together those registration events to get them into one event for scoring. Now, if you load up a race for the very first time and you just want to get started really quickly, best thing you can do is when you land on that scored events tab, click quick setup, and it will automatically create a scored event for each of your registration events. Now, that may or may not be what you actually want, but it does get you started. So it will automatically set up one scored event for each and every registration event you have. Now you can just start with this and then delete any ones that you don't want and map over any of the registration events that you need to combine. Or you can just use the add scored event button here to manually do it on your own. The next thing, and you'll see on the right here, is the timing locations for a scored event. So each scored event has an area on the right to select the start and finish timing locations to be used. This is going to tell the system which timing location to use to set up this entire race segment for the scored event, which is what is used to show the finish times for participants and reports. This is what the main times will be calculated from, essentially. So if you have a start, you can select the start location. If you don't, you can select not a timed start. And then you have to select which location you want to use for this scored event. So it may be the case that you only have a single location for the finish that's being used for a bunch of different events. It also may be the case that you have a separate 5K and 10K location because you wanted to do some of the more fancy filtering that Chris talked about, where I know my 10Kers are going to finish later than my 5Kers. I wanted to separate them out in times. You just got to make sure that when you set up your 10K, you map the 10K finish and not your 5K finish. And that's right here on the right. You'll see the start location and the finish location. So one thing of note here is that we always take the first occurrence on a finish timing location by default. So that means that if you have a 10K that finishes on it's like a 2-loop 10K on a 5K loop, you would have to enter in the what occurrence you're going to finish on. So if you wanted to say you're going to finish on the second lap instead of the first lap, you would do that there. So down below here, there's the start times area. So this is really important because it's how we determine a lot of things, how we determine the clock times that are reported, and it also determines how we accept reads. So each scored event has its own actual start time, which can be set manually from the scored event setup page on the right. You can also set it on the dashboard using the set start times button or from a gunshot marker collected from your reader. So you do have the ability with MYLAPS to enable markers to be passed through in your exporter. So that allows you to actually use the plug to click start time on your decoder, or and then it will pass that gun time over into race day scoring, and you can use this marker utility in race day scoring to map each of the gunshot markers to your scored event start times. So you could say the first gunshot I see is going to be the start time for the 50K cycle. The second gunshot time I see is going to be mapped to the 25K cycle. And you would set that up in advance, assuming that you're going to, say, I know the 50K is going to start first, and I know the 25K is going to start second. If you want to do this, you can, or you can just manually enter the times in. I know for me, I would always have a Garmin watch that was synced up to my decoder times, and I would just set the time down on my Garmin when the actual races went off, and then I would just enter them in manually. We do have some guides associated with these, so if you wanted to learn more about these, you can click the links in the document here and learn more. And that's right down here. So this is really important, again, because what we do is we say, hey, for a finisher of the 5K, we are going to look to see if they have an actual start time and use that as their start time. If they do not have an actual start time, it's going to use the approximate start time, which is just whatever the registration coordinator added when they set up the event, which may or may not be accurate, obviously. Now, if you did have corrals, those will override. So if Matt Avery was in the 5K, but he went off early, you could have an override clock or corral start time, and that will say, I don't care what their actual start time was, I'm going to use their corral start time instead. So let's talk a little bit about scoring by chip versus clock. So each scored event can be scored by chip or clock time. So what this does actually in race day scoring, it really just, and I'll show you over here on the left, clock time or chip time, what time should be used for scoring results. What that is doing is it's determining the sort order of your default reports. So do you want it to be sorted by clock time, or do you want it to be sorted by chip time? And what are those things? So the chip time is basically uses any reads seen after the start time. So it will consider any chip start times that are after the actual start time right here. So if this race started at 6:29:33.13 LPM, I would have a bunch of reads up until 6:29:33.10, but I wouldn't consider those chip starts until they actually went after that, because you always will have reads that happen after the actual start, and that's what you want to consider as a chip start. Now, anybody who doesn't get a chip read, they automatically get assigned the actual start time as their chip start time as well. So no need to worry about capturing a start time for everyone. What that will do essentially, right, is it will make everyone's time, chip start time, or chip total time, effectively either the same as their clock time or a little bit faster because their chip start was after the gun by some amount of time. So again, if there are no reads after the start time, then the actual start time is used instead. Or if they have a corral start time, that's going to override everything. The pre-gun start times are ignored by default, but can be used if desired to calculate chip times in the scored event setup. And I'll show you that in a second here. So on the left, you'll see what time should be used for scoring results, clock time or chip time. And then just below that, there's a setting to allow pre-gun or corral times. So what that is saying is that I want to allow a chip time to be selected that happened before the gun time. So this may or may not be what you want, but it could be. So you have to be kind of careful with this. There's also a setting in here to filter all reads for the start read. In the case that you want to basically say, I want to ignore absolutely everything until participants of this event get a start read, and then I'm going to consider stuff. So this is typical if you're doing a pull start triathlon where you got kids out in transition walking around with chips on, and then they do a pull start later, and they've already got like finish or like transition times and finish reads collected. So this setting will make sure that all of those early transition times and finish reads and stuff aren't even considered until we got that start. Now it is dangerous because if you never get a chip start for someone, you're never going to get any reads. So be careful with these settings, but they may be useful to you depending on your scenario. Okay, so we talked a little bit about segments. Segments are essentially how we calculate the net times for timing or for race day scoring. So when we set up the scored event, we said that there's this start location and this finish location. And the difference between these two is going to be our chip time, the difference in times between the time they got read at the start and the time they got read at the finish. We call that our entire race segment. That's going to be like the default total time, essentially. So that is what we call a segment. And you can have one or many. So basically, you can have your entire race segment for the 5K, the 10K, the 15K, and so on. But you could also have split segments that are from one location to another location. And you can have as many of those as you want. So they're what race day scoring uses to calculate times and paces for participants. They use timing locations as start and end points, and then calculate the time it takes to get between them. So on the right, you'll see I got two timing locations, one called start, another one called finish. And I have my arrow in between them that represents the segment. It's the time it takes to get from the start to the finish. So all scored events have this entire race segment that is simply the time it takes to get from the very start to the finish line. And again, you can create additional segments that start and finish at any timing locations you have set up. And you can learn more about setting all of this up at this link here. But the main thing in race day scoring that may be a little bit different about other scoring out there is that we do allow you to create any number of segments however you like. You don't have to, like in Race Director, where you had to basically say, define segments to cover the entire distance of the event. You don't have to do that here. You can have overlapping segments. You could have, let's say, a 100K bike ride where you want the entire time reported, but then you want just one other segment reported, and it's a middle hill climb segment that's from like the base of a climb to the top of a climb. In race day scoring, you don't have to define the time it took to get from the start to the bottom of the hill and from the bottom or the top of the hill to the finish. You only need to define the additional segment, which is how long did it take to get from the bottom to the top, right? So we allow you to be very flexible with the segment setup in race day scoring, but it's just really important to understand all the parts, which are, you know, the timing locations and the occurrences, which we'll talk about in a bit. So segments are found down here, just beneath the Corrales area. And you'll see by default, we have you know, the name of the segments. Now you can't actually adjust the entire race segment because it's generated for you by default. And all of these settings now are actually on the scored event tab. So all of the default settings for the scored event are found over there. So you now define the distance and the endpoint occurrence to use actually on the scored event itself. And so this entire race segment is kind of locked down based on the time or the scored event setup. Okay, so moving on to age groups and top finishers, how we put together our awards categories. So again, we're covering a lot today, and this is a basic just getting started into race day scoring. If you wanted to learn more about how to set up all this stuff, this is where you'd really want to sign up for a self-certification class or attend one of our virtual certification classes when the next one happens, where we will walk you through a full race setup and click every button with you. For right now, we can't spend all that time, so we're just doing a cursory overview. So what are age groups and top finishers? They are the breakdown of participants within a scored event based on their gender and age. So race day scoring generates a default report for these age groups for each scored event that has age groups set up. So, you know, you might have a 23-year-old may fall into the male 20 to 25 band or the 20 to 29 band based on however the organizer wanted to award their participants. So you can create all those age groups in the age groups area. Now, top finisher categories are a way to give awards to a top group of participants. Most common to see are like a top 3 overall male-female and then masters male-female that are 40 plus. And we also have the ability to do all sorts of custom filtering. So you can set up custom top finisher categories based on the custom question response, for instance. If, for instance, you had your RunSignup registration coordinator add a custom question for, are you a Clydesdale Athena athlete? And you wanted to say everybody who said yes to Clydesdale or said Clydesdale to what category are you gets put into this custom top finisher category. And that's what we'll see a lot of triathlons do. But also it's really nice if you needed to do a report for like who was the fastest local and you had a question for that. You could do all sorts of fun stuff with this. So we do have, again, guides on how to set all of that up right here. And in general, how to set age groups and top finishers up here. So you'll find the age group setup on the tab right here with a little trophy. And typically what you'll do is use this range insert button here. And that just basically allows you to say, give me 25-year age band age ranges starting at age 20. And then it'll just drop in all of the age groups for you, and it will give you a little preview of each of them. Now, you can also, when you do that range insert, automatically pad the 14 and under or the 99 and overs or whatever. We also have a few other features in here. If you wanted to add them one by one, you could. You can copy them. You can actually import and export age groups between races now as well. And the set top finishers is where you would set up your overalls and masters and all that kind of stuff. So if you're in the age groups area here, you would just click that range insert button, and you would just define how big your range is, what gender should be included, the starting age, ending age, the number of winners, and whether or not you'd like upper and lower age groups included. This screenshot's a little old. We have now added the ability to automatically include non-binary participant age groups. If you'd like to do that, you can check that box there. If you don't have any non-binary participants in the race, it won't show any, it won't add categories for any. It will only do that if you actually have someone registered as non-binary and RunSignup. So if you notice that, don't worry. Like if you don't want to show non-binary anywhere, it's not going to unless there's actually registration data that says that. So that may be helpful to you if you need to do that. And similarly, you can set up top finisher categories and say that you want these to be for male, female, non-binary, or not. And basically, if you are familiar with Race Director, the top finisher category setup is very similar. You have the ability to set up the bands on the left and say open, starting at age 0, priority is 1, meaning top priority. You can say in here if it was scored by chip time that you want to score the top finishers by gun time. You can say that you want to show gender separately or combine them all together in one category. Sometimes they like to do kids runs where they just say, give me the top 10 kids, and you can set up a top finisher category to do that here. And you would just basically say for how many, it would be one field for everybody. Now, the double dipping setting on the right there is how you want to remove participants who qualify for a top finisher category from their age group. So many times they want to say, hey, if you got first overall, you don't also get an age group award, right? So our default is to say that we want to remove them from their age groups. But if you want them to double dip, you could say that you do not want to remove them and uncheck this. And then if, I got first overall, I would get the 30 to 39 win as well as the first overall win. Beneath that, there's this participant filters area, which is a way to filter the participants who qualify for this band. So if you only wanted to say that participants who had Clydesdale as a custom question response, you could do that there. And the band jumping settings. So these settings are like, how do I determine who goes into what band? So by default, all is selected. What that means is that participants who are in a lower priority in the list, so like male is, or open is top priority, masters is second priority, veterans is third priority, and so on. If someone who is 50 plus, so the starting age was 50 on the veterans, let's say, if they are 50, but they got first overall, which category should they get? Should they get veterans or should they get open? So all means that you're allowed to jump up to the open category. So instead of taking your veterans award, which I qualified for based on my age, I'm going to jump up always to a higher priority if possible. So the veteran, instead of getting his first vets overall award, he'll get the first open overall award. None means that I never want people to jump out of their categories. So if you've got like a Clydesdale category, you might want to say that, hey, the Clydesdale doesn't get to win the overall category. They must stay in their Clydesdale category. So that would be none. You could also move around the priority to say that the Clydesdale and Athena is at the top, and then the Open Masters and Vets are at the bottom, and use the all so that it basically says, hey, if you get Clydesdale, you definitely get that always. You're jumping to the top. That's another way to do it. Double dip is basically saying, hey, if you got first overall and you're 50 plus, well, then you get every single band you possibly could qualify for. You get first overall, you get first masters, and you get first veterans. And if maybe you unchecked this double dipping setting here, you might get your age group award as well. So this is very flexible and allows you to award in a many number of different ways. Definitely try playing around with this if you have a race loaded to see how it affects your age group results and your overall report. It's got a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. And finally, there's this by rule setting, which essentially allows you to define prize money values for up to 5 finishers per band per gender. So you could say that I know the prize money was like $100, $75, $50, $30, $10 for each of my different categories. And then we'll figure out on the back end what's the best value. So maybe if you got third overall, it's better to get the first Masters award in value than it would be if you got third overall category win. So there's some really cool things you can do here. All right, let's move on to reports. We're going to look at viewing, printing, and customizing result reports. So reports can be created for each scored event and have one or many report sections within them. They have a great deal of potential customization. So scored events can have different report sections available to create based on their setup. For instance, a scored event without age groups cannot add an age group report section to a report, and a scored event without team scoring setup cannot create a team summary report. So we kind of make it contingent on the scoring setup you have. Some default reports are created automatically when saving different parts of the application. So you'll have this, you'll see when you set up the scored events, you automatically have these new reports created for you called like 5K overall report and 5K age group report. Those get built for you automatically. You can get rid of them, customize them, build new ones, duplicate them, do whatever you want. You don't have to use them. They just are there for you because we thought it'd be good to have some stuff pre-built. So we just predefine basically what columns typically would show, but you have all of the customization available to you if you wanted to change the columns or add columns or do whatever you wanted. So one thing that's really important with the way that race day scoring works is that you cannot combine results from 2 scored events together. So you can't say, I want to produce a report that has 5K and 10K together. So that is important because you'll want to consider that when you're setting up your scored events. This is why it's really helpful to be able to combine the registration events together. You may have the 5K run, walk, and club pricing, and you needed to create a club pricing report down the road, but you wouldn't want to create a separate scored event for that. You would actually just put it all into one scored event, and then you can create a filtered report for just the club members down the road. So we have a whole lot of guides on building reports that you can take a look at here. And on race day scoring, if you go down the list, there's this little reports area which you can access to view all the reports. You can type in the name of the report. What we find really helpful is if you just type in 10K in the search reports, it'll filter all the reports down to just your 10K ones or just your 5K ones or so on. And you have little report type filters at the top here. If you wanted to look through the different types of reports, you can do that. And on the left, you can click the name of the report here, and it will bring up a view of the report. So you'll be able to look through and scroll and type in a name or a bib number to search through stuff to be able to find anything you need. You can always click the bib number in a report or elsewhere in the product to look at all of the reads for a participant. And yep. So in addition, you can come in and click the actions button on a report and click edit. And this allows you to update, basically view the report in the what we call report builder, which allows you to see all of the report sections within this report and make any changes that you want to them. You can edit columns, you can add columns, you can filter this report to say only show me those participants who meet these conditions that I've set up here, only show me the males, only show me the females, or only show me everybody who is in Moorestown, New Jersey. Like, you can do anything you want with this. You can move around the columns by dragging and dropping them. You can change the section title if you wanted to. And on the left, you can add additional sections if you wanted to produce a newspaper style report where you showed like the award winners at the top and then the full list of all the results below it. You could do that by adding in an age group section and then moving it to the top of the report. So you have this ability to add any number of sections to a single report. And you don't have the restriction here of the combination of scored events. So you can add multiple sections to a single report, one for the 5K, one for the 10K. You just can't combine, like, say that, you know, I want all the participants from all of my events in one single report. So to build reports, on the report list, just click Build Report, enter in the title of the report, enter in what events you're going to add a report section for, and then click the type at the bottom here, what type of report you want to include. So an overall section is your basic list. Age group section shows you all of the age groups and by band. A pre-race report is basically just your registration list if you wanted basically a report that shows no times and just everybody in it by default. You can also set up templates here, which are basically like what columns do you want to show in this section I'm going to add. Some people like to have a standardized 5K template that they always use. It's the same column order, and they use that for all of their 5Ks, and they have one for the triathlon, which they use. You can learn more about that in some of our help guides as well. So most important thing is getting our results to RunSignup. I know a lot of folks really like our ability to integrate with RunSignup results very easily. To do that, you basically just have to click on the autosave settings for any of the overall reports that you have set up to post to RunSignup. So you'll notice that only some reports can do this. You can see right here that the age group reports are not allowed to do this. And this is because RunSignup automatically generates all of the age groups for you when I send an overall report that includes the age place column, which is there by default. So as long as you have that age place column in your overall report that you're publishing, all the age groups are going to go up. So just click that autosave settings, and on the right here, there'll be an area to add RunSignup results. You can click add stream, fill out all of the info, like information about the result set that you're creating, the title, the scored event it's going for, the pace you want to display, any other info you have, and click add stream, and then save settings at the bottom. And now this report is going to be automatically publishing to RunSignup. And you'll see at the top here, this little auto saves indicator will go green when you are auto saving to RunSignup. So be aware when you're testing things out for the first time, you're not going to push results until you do this work to enable auto saves and actually, start publishing. So don't worry about testing on a race that's live. You can absolutely get the data from RunSignup, do the participants in, add in some manual times, and just see how it goes. And you're never going to post anything to RunSignup unless you explicitly tell it to. So don't worry about that too much. All right, I think that's getting close to the end here. So now let's just look at getting help with race day scoring, what to do when you don't know what to do. So in race day scoring, there's a little get help icon in the top right. This is the best way to get in touch with us, because what this does is it sends us a snapshot of your race file as it is in its current state. And so if you're having an issue with a specific area, saying like, hey, I'm working on age groups and I can't do what I want, can you help me? This is what I want, and it's not doing that. We'll be able to see that and help you get it to the point that you want it. So just go ahead and click that get help and click send here. This is the best way to get in touch with us. It helps us have the context that we need to help you. In addition, You can access the help guides if you wanted to look through those. And at the very bottom, you can book a training session with Crisp if you'd like to set up more of a one-on-one scenario if you have more involved questions or would like a phone call. In addition, we do have a support number, and we have that monitored. On the weekends, if you have issues on a race site, we highly recommend just giving us a call. Chances are it's something simple, and we know how it is on race site. You're not thinking straight. There's speakers blaring and people yelling at you. So sometimes you're a little flustered, but a phone call is really a quick way for us to help you out if it's something simple. We might be able to help you really quick. But we definitely have people on staff on the weekends to help you out. So do not hesitate to get in touch in any way possible. If you need assistance, we want to make sure that we get you, or that you can get results in a fast and accurate way on site. So what's next? We have this certification quiz for you. It's just a basic quiz, essentially going over some of the intricacies of the MYLAPS integration with race day scoring. So the link is in the slide deck. It's in the handouts. We can send it to you if you've missed it or anything like that. And you can just take that at your leisure, and we'll follow up once you complete it. So you don't have to do it right now. You can do it tomorrow or whenever you'd like. We will be following up with you individually when that does happen, though. All right, so I think that is everything for today. We're doing pretty good on time. Was there anything that needs to be answered that did not already?
I think we've gotten through most of the questions.
All right, cool. If there's anything else from anyone, we do have a couple more minutes. So feel free to put anything you have in the chat box, or myself or Crisp, about MYLAPS integration or race day scoring in general.
And I know one person already reached out via email directly to me while they were on this, after they realized they weren't a certified race day scoring timer. And so they've already got the information to go through that certification process. So if you fall into that same category, feel free to shoot either me or Matt an email, and we'll get you set up with that self-certification. And after listening to the thing today, it'll be very, I don't know, you've already done like 70% of everything at this point.
Yep.
So if you're not certified, it's free. And it definitely dives in a little bit deeper into how to set things up that we went through.
Yeah, so this basically told you what the buttons do. Certification will have you do the buttons.
So Matt, there's a question. Is there a way to copy multiple scored events?
To copy multiple scored events? No, there's not a way to copy them. But generally, like, you would just use the quick add. That's the most frequently used option, and then remove any ones you don't need. If you did need to copy a bunch, I guess I would ask what the situation was where you'd find yourself needing to copy multiple events.
Oh, okay. So there's a weekly series of 10 events that needs to be duplicated over multiple weeks. So if those events are on RunSignup, the quick setup actually happens. It's a very quick process. I mean, I could even possibly go in and share my screen and set up an event and just show you how quickly you can set things up.
You want to do that? Yeah.
I can. Give me one sec.
As you're doing that, I had a question come in from Bill asking, are you able to push live results as the race is going on, or do you have to do it at the end of the event? No. So the way it works with the auto saves is that it will automatically publish those as results happen. So as reads come in and they're turned into scored reads and they get added to the reports, those automatically get pushed to RunSignup. So in real time, you'll get those results pushed to RunSignup without you having to do anything. As long as that autosaves indicator is green at the top and you've got all your autosaves set up, you are good to go.
Yep. So if I'm on the dashboard and just going back to how quickly you can set things up, and I go into manage races, import a race, search, and I want to pull in this race that's coming up this weekend. I can quite literally save sync settings. And then if I hit refresh, there are 177 people just pulled in. I can see my people. I can set up my timing locations as needed, scored events. We have a bunch of different events. I go to quick setup, boom, all of my events are now in there. Now, some of these aren't events. Barbecue meal only, obviously not an event. Charity walk is not timed. This challenge course is the virtual event we're going to remove. So I think all the rest of these are timed events. So boom, saved. That's how long it took. I didn't time myself as a timer, but I'd be willing to bet it was about 60 seconds. Now, we're not completely set up for this event, but it just gives you an idea of if these events are set up on RunSignup, you can get all this knocked out very, very quickly. Now, if you've got a lot of splits and things like that, going in and setting up segments and whatnot can take a little bit more time. But otherwise, it's a fairly simple process. And in this scenario, we're doing dynamic bib assignment. So I've got 190 data issues, all because they have no bibs. So when I go in and look at my people, they don't have a bib. But we'll be scanning QR codes with the check-in app, and it'll live sync into race day scoring and to RunSignup. So all these tools work hand in hand.
So Mark's asking about, you didn't have a quick setup after doing an import from Race Director. So it might be that you have something unique going on with your Race Director export, but generally, if you don't see the quick setup function, it's because you already have a scored event for each registration event in your race. So you can't click that. So that means you already have all of your scored events set up. So if you want to send a support ticket in, maybe we can help you out from there, Mark, so we can figure out what's going on. So Emily's asking, they have a race director who does a huge raffle, sometimes simulate a race and run score and print out the first page. So we do have a way in race day scoring to change the sort order of a report, and you can use random sort order, and you can basically change the report filter to say you want to include non-starters, or you could create a pre-race list, which is your alphanumeric report, and add that sort override to say you want it to be random, and then print that out and do the same type of thing. Bill Jenkins is asking, what are the main differences between setting up road races versus cross country? And man, we got a good response for you. We got a special session
12th, right?
for cross country.
Yeah.
I think it's July 12th. So we have a
Yep.
specific setup guide for you coming. Definitely keep an eye out for that. It's July 12th. We'll be doing a deep dive on setting up cross country specifically, because as we know,
it'll be at noon. Yeah, noon on the 12th. Eastern, sorry, Eastern daylight time.
All right, I think that's everything. So thanks everyone for attending. We will be, recording this and sharing it out on our YouTube channel at RunSignup YouTube channel, and probably have it in our help documents as well. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions again in the future. My email is Avery@RunSignup. You can also use RaceDay at RunSignup for race day scoring support specifically, or crisp@runsignup.com, and we'll be able to help you out. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See ya.